Good evening, everybody. So I apologize to anybody who tuned in and got the volume cut off. I mess with my mic sometimes and it just cut off. So I will watch for the red light this time. So welcome to the informational short video here on the R2C middle school yoga program. This is going to be a lot shorter than the first one. I get long-winded anyway, so I'm going to try and keep it really brief and just go over the main differences that your middle school child will experience when being in this program compared to our elementary school or the high school. So basically in elementary school, or let's go all the way back to your first grader, right? So your first and second grader, there's a process of development within children where, think back to that 6, 7, 8-year-old. By 8, they usually start transitioning out of it. But your 6, 7, 8-year-old typically express very clearly. Everything they're thinking, they tend to just bring it right through in verbal tones and can tell you whatever they're thinking they're saying. It's like Donkey from Shrek to me, are these kids, the younger kids, right? So they have this very, it's one speed, it's one reality, what they think they speak. And so as parents of these kids, a lot of times we get a little, sometimes it can be a little much, right? Because they're so verbal and so vocal. But then as we start to transition our kids into the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they start to become internalized little human beings. And so what happens when they start internalizing their world is that we lose a lot of the contact with them and exactly how they're processing, right? So as soon as they become internalized, basically what they think, they start to have internal dialogue, internal conversations that then make up some of the decisions that they make. And so in this process, it's nice because 3rd through 5th grade, typically we still have a very solid foundation. The family structure is still very prevalent in the kids' developmental phase. But now transitioning to middle school, the big difference that we see with our kids that transition to middle school is they're still internalizing a lot, all of their processing becomes this subjective reality, right? So everything that they are thinking and analyzing in thought form and working through in their own mind, it becomes this internal dialogue where then they decide decisions basically by their own internal process. And so the difference between 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, of course I'm kind of generalizing here, but that age group to middle school is the family foundation, the family matrix that we've created becomes less of the decision-making process, and the friends become more of the decision-making process. So what's happening within the one-on-one relationships and the friends is really how they're validating themselves and how they're making and deciding to make a lot of their decisions. It's this kind of peer aspect that comes into play. And so what we change a lot about the middle school program is we like to enforce and to bring into our program, which this program now we've taken it down to 2 days because the middle school children are becoming, they're becoming driven and passionate about extracurricular activities, whether that be sports or even study, book study, or if it's friends, or if it's, music, whatever these external passions are, they're really starting to get into that resonance, and they're starting to explore that. And then they also have more homework. So we've taken this one down to 2 days, although it is 2.5 hours long. So we do a 2:30 to 5 o'clock class. And so of course a lot of this is physical yoga practice because in the physical movement we're able to release a lot of the stress of the day, a lot of the mental fatigue, right, that they've experienced and sitting throughout the day and having to learn and be kind of these monotonous, routine, robot kind of young people. And so we're bringing a lot of movement and different movement into the body, which is really great for connecting mentally mental and physical together. And so in this class, we do this, but we also still have a lot of these collective kind of creative, and where in elementary school it's a lot more playful, it's a lot more instructor led, where here we're really facilitating a lot of the group connection. And so our biggest goal here is to really get the girls into a collective dynamic and to engage with each other, but engage in ways that have kind of been implanted from a lot of our hoped for outcomes for each week. And so in this middle school program, what we do is we've taken really classic, actually these are 8, their psychology. It's high school. It's taught in high school psychology. It's taught in AP psychology. But we're bringing in a lot of classical, like psychological processes for each week. And so we do this just like we do in high school and in elementary school. We always start with the foundation, right? So teaching the kids what to be grounded, foundational, present is, right? So this is week 1. Week 2 is all about relationships. Week 3 is all about the self. Week 4 is about the emotional body. Week 5 is about our voice and how we express. Week 6 is about our mental body. And week 7 is kind of the grand perspective of who we are and what we're creating, right? And so that's always the typical structure of each of our sessions. And then for here in middle school, what we're doing is bringing in these classic psychology methodologies, teachings, core standards, and we're bringing it in, and I'm going to give you the classical psychology definitions. And then of course, as we integrate this into the middle school, it's integrated in a way that's a language that they understand, and it's more conceptual, and it's more in how we construct the yoga class and what we're talking about and how we're engaging with them. So it becomes more of this social a social collective that starts to engage with these elements. So week 1, again, this foundational week, we do nature versus nurture. And this is really, again, remember, so kids have gone from elementary school to middle school, and so they're really starting to distance themselves from the family. And as the family, you just hope and pray, right, at this point, that all of the traditions, the belief systems, the rules, the expectations, right, the morals that you've set in place are anchored with enough stability that as they start to bring their world into this external peer-driven world, that they start making those foundational core decisions that the family's implemented. But again, this is just developmental psychology. Kids at this stage start to break away from that family, that tribe, and start making decisions based off of their friends and their peers. And so what we're doing is, in this first week, we're really teaching them the nature versus nurture, right? So what are you picking up from your environment, and what has been nurtured into you? And it's really understanding this, again, because in this phase, middle school, they're not only internalizing everything, but now they're looking for validation in the friends, not the family and what the family's moral code is, right? They're looking at the friends now to validate kind of these belief systems or what they're feeling internally. And so here we're really bringing them back into this really grounded place of, you know, what's your environment telling you, and what's kind of that core system, and finding that really authentic connection to what feels right. And so we're constantly through all of these programs really teaching empowerment, and it's about knowing internally who you are and then being able to express that externally without needing the approval of the external factors, right? These peer groups. And so it's starting from that foundational aspect and cultivating that strong empowerment of who you are, and then being able to express that with complete authenticity. So that's week 1. This nature versus nurture gets brought into this middle school, but with very Again, very easy concepts that are digestible for the middle school audience. Week 2, it's all about mirror neurons. So week 2, again, relationships, right? So we teach about the mirror neurons and how our emotions are triggered and how we feel and sense. We are triggered by other people's emotional states and the faces they make and the motions they're feeling that we then feel. And this is all a neurological breakdown of mirror neurons, right? And so we have fun teaching that and teaching exactly why, you know, when somebody's crying, they want to cry, or when somebody's angry, they want to get angry and defend, right? So it's a really fun way to kind of teach them how this peer circle is influencing them. Week 3, again, week 3 is all about the self. So here we do the Maslow's triangle, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and gosh, I talked for like 10 minutes on this last time. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, but this is one of my favorite topics. Again, this is teaching the self. And so here there's this amazing concept of the hierarchy of needs, that when people don't have their foundational needs, right? Security, food, a place to go to sleep at night, right? So there's this triangle where if this basic need isn't met, you can't move to the next step of life development. And so what they're saying about millennials nowadays, I am going to talk for 10 minutes on this. What they're saying about millennials these days is that they're coming in so entitled, right? And the reason why millennials are getting this horrible label of entitlement is because if you look at this Maslow's triangle, they're coming in, of course, this is again a generalization, but millennials who were raised with a very secure foundation of home and had those basic needs met, you know, as long as they fall within these parameters, we're seeing that these kids are coming in and having almost every single one of these needs met, except for this like kind of enlightenment transcending kind of top of the pyramid that they claim in Maslow's triangle. And so it's really interesting to see that these kids that we're raising and these kids that are here today kind of come in with this entire triangle of needs met, where in human to human terms, people are calling this entitlement because these kids haven't had to work to earn any of this. They're just kind of given it. And so it's really interesting to be able to talk to these kids and give them tools on how to feel, because what we're seeing in this triangle, the hierarchy of needs, is that because they haven't had to work for any of these things to get met in life, that they're just given everything, which is to no fault of their own, right? They have Google and can get instant answers, where we had to go look it up in dictionaries and encyclopedias, and you know, they can Alexa buy something or get Alexa to order pizza, right? So they think it, they want it, they get it. And so that's the beauty of living in this day and age. And so it's teaching basically the core of, okay, so what do you really want, right? Because that's the fail of this triangle of needs, is that when we get everything we want, we basically haven't had to do all that soul-searching work to figure out who we are and what we really want, right? And so we're constantly seeking outside of ourselves to kind of find some kind of fulfilling quality. And so a lot of times that looks like materialistic wants and needs. And that's how people who haven't figured out who they are really start to fill or think they feel, right? It's this materialistic kind of outside in quality. And so that's the fun of this third week, my favorite week. It's about teaching how to understand what's authentic about each person, so that as they open up into knowing that they are instant manifestors, they get everything they want, which is amazing. That's just the time space we live in. And so it's teaching them how to have that core foundation, right, to then actually know what they want. So it's more connected to them, and it doesn't feel empty when they get what they want. And this is, you know, the grass is always greener mentality. So the next level 4, this is basically in this session we do a lot of the mood disorders from classic psychological definition, right? And so we talk about you know, the highs and the lows of the emotional body, and how emotions are some of the beautiful things that us as humans have the ability to experience, but it's when we get stuck in these emotions, right, that create kind of this definition of the mood disorders. And so it's, again, just having open conversation about this, but in a middle school way, so that it's not you know, it's not a lecture. So this is kind of what the collective will be bringing through and discussing, and then again being able to see how each one of the students can engage in this and then create this collective of supportive young women that can be there and support each other. Level 5 here, session 5, we go into sensation and perception, and this is all about again, this kind of technology world, right? We're getting so desensitized, and again, it's this instant manifestation. We get what we want, and so it's not having a good understanding, or it's about perspective. And so when we're standing at the bottom of the mountain, you know, you don't have as much perspective as you do when you're standing on top of the mountain. And so with that, it's just a simple definition. This gets really fun, and there's a lot of ways to kind of play with sensation and perception. And then the 6th week we do is dreaming and the subconscious, the unconscious, and going into the iceberg of reality here that we're operating from. And so this is all the Carl Jung stuff, which is just so much fun. And so we teach a lot of symbolic imagery and just have a lot of fun playing with symbology and exploring this kind of subconscious, unconscious world that the girls are tapped into, right? And we'll be able to express and hear and connect with each other. So the last week here, week 7, which we have more than 7 weeks, so whatever they're really engaged in or whatever we feel like we need to add more of, we'll extend certain core concepts within this whole structure. But the last week is all about peer influence. And so again, the main differentiation between the elementary school and middle school is that the kids go from seeking the family's approval in elementary school to seeking the peer approval in middle school. And so we really drive home a lot of these peer influences and how, and basically this compounds from every previous week, but it's just kind of the grand finale of really getting them to see how living in external an outside-in world, right? Seeking validation here first instead of the internal world, instead of here first, how that can really disrupt you and cause a lot of the anxiety, the guilt, the fear, the shame, you know, all of these, the illusion, a lot of these things that they're dealing with emotionally. And so again, you know, these are really heavy. This is like AP psychology for high school. So these are really heavy concepts, but we break it down in a very digestible, integrated way, to where the kids don't feel like they're sitting in another class. They don't feel like they're sitting in class. They're doing it through yoga and through connection with the girls and talk and some, you know, guided imagery. And so it's just a really great practice. Julie, again, is just amazing. She has the biggest bag of tricks in yoga that I know, and she is just so intuitive with knowing these platforms and these different concepts that we're teaching, and she really has a beautiful way that she integrates this wisdom and knowledge to the kids through interaction. And so we will be posting a lot here in this parent forum, so stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already, because we're going to be posting a lot of the things that we're finding work with the girls, so you can implement these at home. There's also areas to ask questions, so feel free to ask questions when you need to, and then also follow on Facebook, because we'll be doing lots of parent surveys there to figure out what you want more information on, and then always feel comfortable emailing us directly at r2cyoga@gmail.com, and that's R and then the number 2 C yoga@gmail.com, and you can, same thing for our website. So stay in contact with us. If you need anything, don't hesitate, reach out. We'll give you whatever we have and help you in whatever way we can. So thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we get to see you girls this year in the R2C middle school program.